Welcome to the Sportscast, November 16th, 2020. This is the Tyler Turner Show. Please subscribe on iTunes to the Sportscast. Also check us out on Twitter, Sportscast1, Periscope, YouTube. Please leave a like and leave comments and give us a review. Say whatever you want, but try to say you got some good quality college football information from the Tyler Turner Show. Anyhow, today we're here with Ken Doepel from West Coast College Football. I have actually, for quite some time, I've always checked out their stuff. They're good at sharing basic analytics when it comes to the Pac-12 and West Coast football in general. So, Ken, how are you doing, man?
Hey, Tyler, doing good, and thankful to be on and talking Pac-12 football with you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your site, and you just tell us a little bit about your Twitter and how you got that going and how long you've been at covering basically the West Coast and specifically would be the Pac-12.
Yeah, so our website is westcoastcfb.com. Definitely check it out. We have articles that cover the Pac-12 and Mountain West and Big Sky as well. It gives you a good rundown on, especially, going into a season, figure out, what your team has, the pieces they have, how their coach situation is, their recruiting. We kind of cover all that in a fun way. It's a free website, which these days is getting pretty rare. A lot of sites are going to charge you money. So if you're looking for a free site that offers good analysis on the Pac-12 and Mountain West, it's definitely a great place to check it out. And then our Twitter handle is West Coast CFB. We definitely get a steady stream of tweets going out, breaking down Pac-12 results, providing analytics for the Pac-12 and Mountain West and Big Sky. So definitely give us a follow there and check it out, and I hope you like it.
Now, do you know like Fact Pac-12 or any of the other like Pac-12 Twitter handles? Pac-12, I think what's the other one? Pac-12 Twitter. Do you have any relation to them, or are they just totally completely unrelated to you?
Yeah, Sports Pac-12 is completely unrelated.
Okay.
Us, yep. But we do work with 12 Pack Radio. Give their podcast a listen. Pod. So those are two podcasts that we're linked with. So definitely check those out as well.
Oh, so you're linked with because I listen to Pac-12 Radio all the time. They have some really good stuff.
Yeah, yep. So those are friends of ours, and
sweet.
We love what they put together, and we're on there sometimes. So it's definitely a great place to listen and get information about the Pac-12 as well.
We actually had Hifliday on here probably about a month ago, and obviously he's amazing at breaking down some awesome baseline talent on rosters. He does a pretty terrific job, game grades. So, so man, obviously Pac-12 football, last Power 5 conference to get going. We didn't know if they were going to get going. I'd given up hope. I'd given up hope on the Big Ten and the Pac-12, and then out of the depths of disparity, they both, rose up like lights in the night, and they got it going, and it's awesome. So you had all 5 Power 5 teams come back. Through 2 weeks, obviously there's been some not so, some hiccups, what you could say. You had Utah get both their games canceled. Cal had actually both their games canceled, but they were able to reschedule with UCLA, which was, I think, a good idea that the Pac-12 was able to pull together. But for the first 2 weeks, just to ask you from a generalized perspective, what have you thought about the play? 4 games the first week, 5 games last week. What have you thought about the quality? What has stood out to you? What has maybe not stood out to you? And what would you? And then we can kind of talk about future prognostications moving forwards. But what has been your overall thoughts after the first 2 weeks of football in the Pac-12?
Yeah, my initial takeaway is just I think it's a very unpredictable season. There's a lot of results so far that I don't think people necessarily saw coming, and I think that a lot of the the top teams had some players leave early for the NFL. And I think that kind of allowed an even more parity than the Pac-12 is even used to. Pac-12 always has parity, but I think it's even more so this year. I definitely didn't expect Colorado to look as good as they are so far. Another wrench in every team's plans is, all the players have to sit out due to COVID. So, I think that adds just to like the mystery of every game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get results like, UCLA and Cal, had like 48 hours to prepare for each other. And then UCLA just dominated them. And I did not see that coming. I thought, I thought Cal might win that game by, close game, but Cal would win like 20-17. But, UCLA looked way better than them. So it's just like, I feel like when you're watching these games, or like, UW and Oregon State, like I did not expect Oregon State to hang with UW that close. So it's been a kind of a wild start, and I don't feel like it feels as predictable as most seasons do, where you can kind of tell which teams are the cream of the crop, and you're getting a lot of close games now as a result.
Now, to be a little bit of the devil's advocate, I don't know if that's the right word to use. Now, Oregon was the team that you would say probably coming into this year was considered by most prognosticators as the top team. Now, they had 4 opt-outs. They lost Penei Sewell, the best offensive tackle in college football. You then lost 3 defensive players, Thomas Graham, quarterback, Jevin Holland, nickelback, and Brady Breeze. I think that some people thought that they would struggle, but through the first 2 weeks, and now and everyone on here knows that I'm a fan of Oregon, and that is my team. But I would still say that from what I've seen, they're significantly the best team still in the league. They didn't even play great the first 2 games. They're -5 when it comes to the turnover ratio. They turned the ball over twice in the Stanford game, 3 times in the Washington State game. Actually turned the ball over, to be specific, 3 times in the first quarter in the Washington State game, and actually have not produced any turnovers yet. They pretty easily won both games, 21 over Stanford and 14 over Washington State. What would you say about Oregon so far, especially since obviously they were kind of the team coming in, then they had all the opt-outs. Some people thought that they would really struggle because of that, but then they've kind of been, I guess, more so than like you said, it has been unpredictable. Cal didn't look as good their first game as you thought. Washington, who I still think is one of the better rosters in the Pac-12, pretty much could have lost that game if that bad call hadn't happened. And then you have USC, who basically was darn lucky to beat Arizona State and was darn lucky to beat Arizona. Had a couple breaks go their way. They could have easily be 0-2. What have you thought about Oregon? Because I think so far, bias aside, I think they have been the most impressive team so far at the early part of the season.
Yeah, my takeaway is the same as you. I think that when you consider what Oregon lost, just from last year's team, but also during the opt-out period. What they've done is really impressive, especially offensively. The offense has been amazing, and I mean, to break in a new quarterback and already have it, scoring, what it was, 43 points against Wazoo. I mean, it's been really very impressive what they've done in that they can play sloppy but still win these games with comfortable margin in the end. So. I think that they've definitely been the most impressive team. I think USC, I mean, it's just, they look like they're going to lose their first 2 games, and they somehow, I don't know how, pulled them out, but, I don't know how long they can get lucky doing that. And then UW, I mean, yeah, it did not look good for them, when Oregon State was inside the 5-yard line, they had like that 3rd and 1, and then, that was a bad kind of call, it looked like, at least. That prevented Oregon State from getting that touchdown or potential touchdown. So definitely UW and USC, I would say, have kind of underperformed my expectations. And I think that Oregon has exceeded. I think that there's still work for Oregon to do, but that's actually makes them, almost more impressive, that their defense is going to do better as the season goes on. It's that's kind of weirdly been like not as good as I expected it to be. But it's going to get better. They have a lot of young talent. So it's when time we get to like December, it's going to be playing at a very high level. And I think that they're definitely the team to beat in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I agree with you on when it comes to, because I was kind of bullish. Oregon lost those guys, but I was like, they've recruited so well on that side of the ball, despite losing that many guys. They still had so much talent that I didn't think there was going to be much for drop off on defense. And actually that side of the ball has surrendered 400 yards in both games. They did miss a lot of tackles in the last game. The safety position is a major question mark. Those two opt-outs are very visible in that position. And then I thought the offense, I was like, well, losing Panay Sewell, having 5 all-new starters, I'm like, their offense might step back. I actually think their offense is significantly better than last year, and I think a lot of that goes to the fact that you have Joe Moorhead. I also think they have by far the best running back group in the Pac-12, and that really helps because they're just able to do so much, whether it's out of the backfield, catching the ball, running. And then actually Oregon, and I was kind of bullish on this, I said that receiving core that has not been so good has gotten a lot of reps, and they're all like seniors and sophomores and juniors that have played quite a bit, and they've been very good. I think Johnny Johnson III, Jalen Redd, Micah Pittman, Josh Delgado, all of them are all pretty good wide receivers, and so they have a pretty good group there. But I do agree the defense so far, little sloppy with the tackling, and they've surrendered a lot more yards than I thought they'd be. So actually the good side of the ball has not been as good. And the ball that I thought would take a little time is right now the number 4 in college football as far as efficiency. They're number 5 in total yards. They're number 5 rushing offense in the nation. So they actually have technically one of the best offenses through the first couple games. But always looking ahead to like what you could see, you could foresee in the future. Which team right now that maybe people aren't talking about, but you have seen play, do you think could be, when all said and done, could be in position to possibly win in this unpredictable year? Who do you think is the team that could be in position to possibly win the Pac-12 this year, or be in position to at least play for the Pac-12 title?
Yeah, I think that, the two teams that really surprised me with the quality of play they've had is Colorado and UCLA. Colorado's offense looks really, really, really good. And then UCLA's offense also looked really good. And, UCLA's defense didn't look so good against Colorado, but their defense looked really good against Cal. So, I think that I would put those two teams as, the Pac-12 South seems like it's up for grabs. USC is probably the favorite still. But they haven't impressed that much. So Colorado, you got to watch out for them. And then also watch out for UCLA. I think that UCLA Oregon game this week could be kind of a fun one to really give a measuring stick to what UCLA is actually able to do. Because even Colorado still, I think that we're not, they're 2-0 now, but I think that once we see what UCLA can do against Oregon will make me realize either, UCLA is legit or they're not. So, we still a lot of games to be played and to kind of figure it all out. But I think Colorado and UCLA are the two teams that look like they could surprise and maybe win the Pac-12 South.
Yeah, I mean, you are right about Colorado. This is a team that I did my preseason predictions. I believe, I'm not looking at it right now, I think I might have had Colorado winning one game, and if it was one game, it was over Arizona. They were either 1-5 or 0-6. But not only have they been 2-0, they currently are top 30 in both defensive and offensive efficiency. Neuer has been tremendous. He's been a dual threat guy. He's passing, throwing. Little Chenault, they have a very good running back who currently Broussard, who leads the Pac-12 in running. They've even defensively, they've gotten off to quarterback both games. They forced turnovers in the UCLA game. A little bit of that Stanford. Now Davis Mills, who obviously had the false positive for the COVID, kept him out of the Oregon game, and he actually did not end up being cleared until I think it was the day before the Colorado game. And it really did impact him. The first half, he wasn't very good. He was much better in the second half, and he actually almost brought them back. I think they were down, quote, I could be wrong, I think they were down 35-16 going into the fourth quarter, and they actually only ended up losing 35-32. So it did help that Mills was pretty off in the first half, and he was much better in the second. And I actually think Stanford, seeing them the first 2 weeks, I think they actually have some talent on that offensive side of the ball. But Colorado, you're right. They're 2-0. Their game's canceled this week against ASU. They're probably going to go against USC. They're going to be undefeated probably, unless they have a makeup game this week, which who knows what's going to happen this year. Can't really predict it. Things change so rapidly. But Could they beat USC? I mean, when I look at them on paper, I'm like, they shouldn't beat USC, but then who is USC? They're the most baffling team, and they have been for the last decade since Pete Carroll left. USC, you just don't know what you're going to get from them. They have all the talent in the world. Most of the years, except for this year, they've had top 5 talent. This year, I think they're in my formula around like 12, but they're still probably the most talented roster on paper in the Pac-12. And they got guys who have NFL potential on all levels, but you look at them on offense, they have trouble running the ball. Their offensive line, especially in the middle, is having trouble getting any real push, any really moving people off the ball. And also Slovis has been pressured. Slovis, honestly, has been a little off. He's not been extremely accurate. They still have a great wide receiver group: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brew McCoy, Drake London, Tyler Vaughns. But defensively, they're inconsistent in stopping the run. Their linebackers miss a lot of tackles, take bad angles. The defensive backs have trouble tackling. They had breakdowns in the secondary. They're just so USC under Clay Helton. They've been even more so that way. And when you say they're just so USC, means you just don't know what you get from USC. So while right now, like you said, and I predicted, and I think most people predicted USC to win the South, I don't know if you can just stay there. I don't know. I could see them losing to Utah this week. I could see them losing to Colorado. I could see them losing to UCLA. So I guess they're just an anomaly. What would you say, in your perspective, is the most baffling thing about what is the USC Trojans?
Yeah, what you said is very accurate, and it's looking at this week against Utah. If they beat Utah, 42-10, it wouldn't shock me.
No.
But if they lose, 34-10, it also wouldn't shock me. And that's the crazy part about it. It's like they can really just, seem like they turn on and off randomly and week by week. And even during the game, against Arizona State when they were down 27-14,
Yep.
left, and all of a sudden they just crank out 14 points in the span of, under 3 minutes. And it's just, they have more talent than really anyone in the Pac-12, but they don't seem to always have it just gelling, or, maybe it's the coaching, but, and the funny thing is, like, I actually really liked their coaching hires this offseason too. So, I think that Harrell's a talented coach, but maybe the air raid is not a great scheme for what they have, but I don't know, like, their offense should be better than it is with, who they have running the air raid. You'd think they'd be able to score, 40, 50, maybe even 60 points against Arizona, who did not have a good defense, last season. So it's interesting. And I think that it really just comes down to probably, it's the lack of coaching that they've had the past since Pete Carroll left, I guess. They just don't have that top tier coach to really take advantage of their talent, and just, I don't know. They really need to just find a way to play more consistent. And, USC should never be a team that goes 5-7 like they did in 2018. Like, at minimum, you should be winning at least 9 or 10 games with the talent they have in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, because I was seeing these articles, and once again, it's look who USC has, look what the production they have coming back, look at who they have at the skill positions, look who they have even on defense. And I kept on thinking, and I make my predictions, but I'm like, USC's USC until they prove to me that they're not just the most alarmingly inconsistent team. I have trouble, like, really sitting there and be like, oh, USC is going to win this game. USC, like Oregon versus USC. I don't see how USC is going to beat Oregon, because Oregon's tough. Oregon's going to hit you in the mouth. And do I see USC really coming and hitting them back in the mouth? I don't. To me, that just as a game, as a fan or as an observer, like, I want to play USC. They don't really. They're not tough. They're not a team that you can, you're going to give them a body blow, and they're going to give you a body blow back, and they might make a mistake, but they're going to come back. you just don't feel that from USC. You feel like they're probably going to underperform in games that they should overperform. Then once in a while, because of the talent they have, like remember last year, I don't know if you remember against Utah, when they're just like Clean Slovis goes out in the first quarter, and then Matt Fink just plays alley ball, and he's throwing it up to Micah Pittman and Armon Ra and Tyler Vaughns, and all of a sudden they win that game. And it's just because, no one could guard Michael Pittman, Armon Ra, and they have that ability because of the talent. But at the same time, I remember last year against Oregon like blew them out of the building. A couple things didn't go. USC was playing good. I thought, oh my goodness, USC came to play. I don't know if they're going to win this game. But then all of a sudden they give a kick return, they throw an interception, and the wheels completely blew off. Then after that, it was like screen passes were going for touchdowns. I'm like, this team quit. And that's kind of just the modus operandi with them, especially under Helton, is when they get hit in the mouth, they quit. If they come out under motivated against the other team, they'll come out under motivated too. But then maybe once in a while, they have at least a couple guys show up, and you go out there and they throw some bombs, and then all of a sudden they pull off the upset over like Utah because they have that kind of talent. But it's so hard to predict them. It's so hard to say USC is going to be 7-0, and they're going to have a chance to make the college football playoff. I just think under Helton, it's just almost, I would say, darn near impossible to say. Let's talk a little bit about your team, Washington. Obviously, it was the start of the Jimmy Lake era. What I expected from Washington, I forgot what my predictions was. I think I had them be 4-2. I actually might have had them be. Oh no, because I actually made my predictions. I actually had them be 4-1 because I already knew the Cal game was canceled. So the only loss I had to them was Oregon. But I was a little. I probably was. Their defense is good. Their secondary is the best secondary in the Pac-12. Elijah Molden, Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, all those guys are just Keith Taylor. I think it's the best secondary experience. Now, I wasn't super impressed with the front seven. I thought they got run on a little bit. Jefferson's a good running back, but I thought they got run on a little bit. And then their offense, which was a question mark last year, I was not in love with the John Donovan hire because, after all, he was the guy who got fired at Penn State, who Joe Moorhead got hired at Penn State, and Moorhead, who got hired at Oregon, and Washington hires Donovan, who got fired. So I was kind of questioning that hire. And then when I saw the offense, it kind of looked similar to last year. Kind of, they can run. They have some good running backs. McGrew had a good game Sunday. Newton, they have some good running backs. They have a good offensive line. I think Jackson Kirkland might be the best offensive tackle in the Pac-12. Him and Rivera Tucker. But then, once again, not great quarterback play. Once again, not great wide receiver play. And pretty predictable in offense, and really didn't do much. Did pretty well at the beginning, but then as the game went on, that offense pretty much kind of was pretty predictable, one-dimensional, and really it was not playing at a very good level against an Oregon State team, which is just not very good, especially on defense. So what was your overall thoughts of the first game for Washington, and what do you expect of Washington? What are your expectations for the season, and what are your expectations? Yeah, what are your expectations for the season and expectations moving forwards after seeing that first game?
Yeah, going into the season, I thought the same thing as you. I thought Washington would go 4-1 with a loss to Oregon, but I did not expect Oregon State to nearly beat the Huskies. So it was definitely a surprising result in that game. And I think that the Husky rush defense looked vulnerable. I think that the secondary, like you said, looked amazing, and they're going to shut down teams that try to pass on them. But, teams are going to try to run the ball now as a result. So Huskies are going to need to, maybe put more guys in the box, which isn't necessarily their style. They like to play that kind of a nickel defense. Mm-hmm. So, that might not work this year. They did lose Levi Onwuzurike, so that's a big loss for them in losing Tryon. So, maybe that's the reason, but they definitely need to figure something out and maybe commit more guys to the run to stop that. But the defense is going to be fine, but the offense is the bigger worry, I think. I mean, they were able to run the ball against Oregon State, but really who doesn't? So, it's a good or impressive running performance, but can you do it against Oregon? Can you do it against, even Stanford might be a little harder than against Oregon State. So it's not the most inspiring thing in the world when you can't pass the ball against Oregon State. You shouldn't be one dimensional in that way. It's one thing if you just don't need to pass the ball and you can just run and gash the team, but they needed to pass the ball in that game and they couldn't do it. I don't know if Morse is who I would have chosen as the starting quarterback. I think that he looked okay, but it was kind of just a lot of like 5-yard slants he was throwing and nothing down the field. I'd like to see him, try throwing more down the field to really judge him, but he looked limited as a quarterback. The offense looked kind of limited. They need to definitely show more. I think this week against Arizona, they're going to need to throw the ball more to win. Arizona's run defense against USC, while not spectacular, they have some big guys on the D-line. So if Huskies can't throw the ball, I mean, you're going to find a way to get upset at some point. You can't just run the ball only. You have to have a threat of passing the ball. Because like Oregon State, once they realized that Huskies were just going to run the ball every single play, they just started stacking the box and then they stopped the run, right? And then it becomes a very, very close game. And if Huskies didn't get a few breaks their way, they may have lost that game as a result. So I think there's a lot of worry for the Huskies. I think the schedule is still pretty easy. I think they should find a way to beat Arizona. Should be able to beat Washington State. Should be able to beat Stanford. But those games are definitely going to be closer than people maybe thought before the year. And I think that, the Oregon game will probably decide the Pac-12 North between the two teams. And I don't know if the Huskies are capable of beating Oregon with a one-dimensional offense. So it's going to be an interesting season, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Huskies get upset along the way against one of those teams before Oregon.
Yeah, the one thing, so I had a couple thoughts going in my mind. The Washington State game versus Washington, when is that in 2 weeks? Is that next week?
Thanksgiving Friday.
Okay, so just like Oregon State, that game to me is interesting. That Jaden Delora, I don't know if you've seen him play. He's a impressive young quarterback, and they have a couple of wide receivers. Harris, not good with names ever, but I think Harris is one guy's name. The other guy's name I can't think of. So they do have the ability. They actually McIntosh and Borghi, if he's back with him. I do think it's a pretty good offense for Washington State. And it is a different offense. It's not the same as Leach. It's a run and shoot. It's not the air raid. So it's a little different approach to offense, because I know Lake was awesome against Leach. Leach would go for 40 against everyone else, and then he'd go against Lake's defense and score like 10. But I do think that it's a little bit different. That game is kind of interesting to me because they do have the ability to score, have the ability to run. So, and you saw that they're able to be run on. And Washington, where Washington would have to be able to utilize their offense. And I just didn't see it in the first game. And remember, that is the first game. But I like you, was a little surprised. I thought Morse was the fourth quarterback. So when I heard he was starting, I was expecting Sermon first, Thompson second, and then Garber's third. So when I heard it was Morris, I was like, oh, okay. I thought that was the fourth quarterback. So I was a little surprised. And he didn't look that good, but I guess he won the job. So the other guys must have not looked as good as him. So the Huskies have some high-rated recruits at receiver. Jalen McMillan, Puka Nakua, who's played, always plays pretty well. Maurice Spiker, Austin Osborne, but I'm not seeing it. Cade Otton, who's arguably the best tight end in the conference. Also, I didn't see a lot of him in the last game. So I am just wondering what Washington, because, you look at the schedule, and I would think they'd beat Arizona. I still think they'd beat Washington State. And, I think they'd beat Stanford. I don't think Stanford's very good. But then what I saw on offense, I could see them losing to Washington State. I could even see if Davis Mills gets in rhythm with that offense, I could see them possibly outscore Washington taking that game. And then it comes to the Oregon game where, if I saw what I've seen so far of Oregon, what I saw in Washington, remember it's just one game, so I don't want to judge off that. But I would definitely I think Oregon would win because they would have to keep up with them. Oregon's going to score, despite the good defense that Washington has, and I just don't see how Washington's going to accumulate enough offense. So I am curious. They're a team that I know the talent they have in the roster, and I think they're one of the most talented rosters in college, not in college football, but in Pac-12. But will it show this year? And I think that is to be determined. So I think that's one highlight to move forwards. I guess just to finish off here with the Pac-12, I guess we'll go over kind of what we think of this week's games. First game I'm going to ask you about is Cal versus Oregon State. I mean, it doesn't really matter. At Oregon State, no fans, doesn't really matter this year. What do you think about that game?
A week ago, I would have thought that, Cal would probably win that game easily, but Cal did not look good. So that makes me a little skeptical, and this is going to be a hard game to predict. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where this season is just so much harder to predict than I would have thought it would be. So I'm going to go with Cal still, but it really wouldn't surprise me if Cal loses this game. But I think that Oregon State is just, I don't think they have the team this year that's going to win that game. I think Cal finds a way to win it, and they'll probably play better than they're in week 2. I think they might have just been a rough adjustment, going into playing a team that already played already and only having 48 hours, no time to scheme really. So I'll take Cal against Oregon State.
I'm going to take Oregon State. At the beginning of the season, Cal was getting some buzz, like John Wilner. I'm sure you know him for Mercury News. He picked him to win the North, but I always was under the impression that I know Cal was bringing back a lot of people on offense, but the problem was their offense wasn't any good. So they're bringing back a ton of marginal players. I just don't think they have a very good O-line. I don't think they have very limited skill talent. And Garbers is a heady quarterback. He's a tough quarterback, but I don't think he's a very super talented passer. So I don't think. And then the first game of the season, when most offenses, like the defenses, have looked pretty shabby across college football in the Pac-12, but as a whole, the offenses have looked better. And Cal against not a very good UCLA. UCLA surrendered 500 yards the first week against Colorado, and really I don't think is very talented on defense. Cal couldn't do anything. So I just don't know if it's going to change. I actually think Cal is a team that might not win a game this year. And that's kind of surprising saying after a team they were favored to win possibly the North by some, but not by me. I don't think Cal is very good, so I'm taking Oregon State. UCLA, and this is to be determined. I think it's going to either be on ESPN or possibly move to Fox. They don't have a time for the game, but UCLA at Oregon, who do you got for that game?
Yeah, this is the game I'm actually most excited to watch. I think this is going to be the measuring stick game for UCLA to figure out if that performance against Cal's, for real, and also to figure out how good Oregon is. I think the Oregon is going to win this game. I think they're going to win it actually pretty handily. I would say Oregon wins this game by, 14 points or so. But I'm really excited to watch it just to see if UCLA can kind of continue the offensive ability they've shown early in the year. They put some points up on Cal and Colorado. So, it's gonna be a test for Oregon. And I think it's gonna be kind of the measuring stick game for both programs to really see where they're both at for the season.
Yeah, pretty much kind of offer this. You kind of said everything that I would. I think it is an interesting game because it's obviously Chip Kelly. Anytime he goes back to Oregon, that's where he got to start his career. That was pretty much what made Oregon was the Chip Kelly years. I just think Oregon is just too talented. I don't think it's a great matchup for UCLA in general because matchups make fights, as they say. I think they're going to struggle to stop the run. We saw Broussard the opening week, Colorado, really be able to submit his will and was able to kind of run on that defense. And I think you're going to see a similar – I think a team that's going to beat Oregon is a team that has to stop them from running the ball because once they get the run going, then obviously you're going to bring more guys into the box, even like Washington State started to do. And what that does is it just starts setting up the pass. And Moorhead, who's just a terrific offensive coordinator, I think one of the best play calls last week when they kept on coming up to box. So he just sends the running back on a swing, and they kept on reading that swing. They're like trying to cut it off. Up in the box, read the swing, took him on a fly pattern, 70-yard dime to Travis Dye. And that's the thing. If they're going to keep on coming up, if they're going to try to cheat on plays, what it's going to do is just going to set them up over the top, and it's going to make pretty easy reads for big explosive plays down the field. So that is a problem with UCLA. I just think they're going to have trouble up front, and then it's going to set up big plays on the field. I do like Dorian Thompson-Robinson as an athlete. He does make mistakes with the ball. He does put the ball in harm's way. And because of that, I think he could turn the ball over a couple times. I think they'll get. I haven't been that impressed with Oregon's defense, so I think UCLA will score some points. I think Robinson will scramble, and I think he'll make some explosive runs on the ground. But I think all in all, I just think they'll wear them down, and I think they'll be able to take advantage of that late. I could see probably like a 42-21 kind of game. Arizona at your Huskies. So at Washington, what do you think about that game?
Going into the year, I think Huskies would have won this game in a blowout, but it's going to be close. It's going to be a fun game. I'm a huge fan of Grant Cannell. I think that he has a lot of talent, and I actually really like the scheme that Arizona showed last week against USC. So, Husky defense is better than USC's, but Arizona's going to put up some points, and they have a big running back in Gary Brightwell, and big running backs have actually given the Huskies some trouble over the years. Those guys that weigh like 215 plus have been able to kind of beat on the Huskies and gain some yardage. So I think that they're going to, Oregon State was very one-dimensional. All they had was a run game. I think the Arizona is going to be more dynamic and be able to do both. I think that Huskies still find a way to pull it out. They're going to need to show more in the passing game. I think Huskies win this game maybe by 3. It's going to be a really, really close game. I say something like 27-24 Husky win. But it should be a fun one.
Yeah, kind of similar to you. I would have taken Washington by a lot in the preseason. I think Arizona looked better. I also think USC looked really bad. I don't think it's a great matchup for Arizona. Like I said, I think Washington is the best secondary in the Pac-12. I think Cannell is going to make mistakes. He got away with a few plays just because USC is undisciplined, but I don't think that's going to be the issue with Washington. I think they're going to turn the ball over a couple times. I think they're going to get some plays by a guy like Molden or McDuffie in the passing game. You're going to see a couple interceptions, and I think that's going to be enough for there to be a little bit of a gap. I just didn't like what I saw out of Washington's offense, but I think they're going to be able to run on them a little bit. I think they'll get some ground game. Washington's going to have to try to get some kind of passing game, because even if they can run on a team like Arizona and run on an Oregon State and run on some of these teams that just don't have the talent up front, when it comes to Oregon, they're not going to be able just to do that, and they're going to have to take shots down the field. I haven't seen it. I didn't see it first game, and I haven't seen it from Washington for a while. So let's see if they can do it this week. I think they're going to be able to make mistakes. I have it be like a 28-14 kind of game. Obviously, Arizona State and Colorado's canceled. I think USC and Utah is happening. It sounds like Utah got some players back. I would say this is probably the most even matchup this weekend. I would consider it the best matchup in the Pac-12, in my opinion. Who do you have in USC at Washington? USC at Utah.
Yeah, I'm taking the Trojans in this one. I think that we've seen a lot of teams struggle in their first game on defense. USC's got 2 games under their belt, so their offense is going to be clicking at that point. I think Utah is going to have some adjustment. I've heard out of their reports out of fall camp where that Utah has had some struggles in their back end of their defense. So they're breaking in some new guys. I'll take the Trojans. I think Trojans last time they played Utah against a better Utah defense last year, like we talked about earlier, they were just tossing up little like floaters, and then they would just jump the Utah DBs to get the ball. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that again today, this week. And I think USC finds a way to win, and probably a close game, maybe a 3 to 7 point win. But I think the edge for them is going to come just having more, time to prepare their team with having 2 games already under their belt.
Yeah, good explanation there. Man, USC's a team just so hard to predict. They are so damn hard to predict. Because Utah hasn't played yet. Utah had to replace so much on defense, had to replace their starting quarterback, starting running back. There's so much question marks that you're like, oh man, yeah, you have to pick USC. But then USC, look how they have looked and look who they are. My head wants to say USC, but then a part of me is just like, they're going to blow one of these games. And is this the game? If Utah had played, I would unquestionably probably take Utah, especially if they'd looked halfway decent, like they're 1-1, 2-0, and looked, maybe not as good, but looked better. I just think, I know it's not really a road game. It doesn't really matter as much this year. But actually going to Utah in the elevation, probably if there is a home field advantage, just because of change of elevation, and you like Colorado and Utah, probably of any teams in the Pac-12, just because of that, have a little bit of advantage. And obviously Colorado won their opening home game, and we'll see what Utah is, but that probably gives a little advantage because they practice in it, other teams don't. I'm going to reluctantly take USC. I think it is, you make some points because of the defensive backfield having to replace everyone. And you do have big time guys and Amon-Ra and Vaughns and Drake London. And I think they're going to be able to utilize that. But if USC loses this game, I will not be shocked. And I'm not picking them. If I'm at a question mark again, I'm not picking them. And I just don't know. I could see USC losing this game, but I reluctantly take them. I think they make a couple close big-time plays in the passing game, and I think Utah just is a little bit inconsistent because it's the first game of the season, and they're breaking in so many new starters. The last game of the season – last game of the season. Oh, my goodness. It's getting late out. It's getting late here in the Central Time, 9:45. Last game of – so next weekend will be Washington State at Stanford. Interesting game. What do you think about this game?
I've loved Wazoo's offense so far. I think that Mora looks amazing. I think that Travell Harris and Renard Bell at receiver have done a really good job. Deion McIntosh might be the biggest surprise in the Pac-12 to me. I mean, without Max Borghi, and somehow he looks almost just as good, if not better than Borghi. So he's looking really impressive. I think that Wazoo is going to put up points on Stanford. The Wazoo defense has flashed potential at times, but then also kind of just gives up a lot of points in the end. It's not been consistent. Definitely a big fan of Aiden Hector and what he's done at cornerback for Wazoo. But I think Cougars win this game. I think it's going to be a fun one. Kind of ends up being kind of high scoring. I think Cougs win maybe 35-28.
Funny thing about Aiden Hector, he actually was a 4-star Adidas All-American. He signed with Stanford. I don't know if you knew that. And he actually ended up not going to Stanford because he got into some off-field trouble. He walked on at Washington State. And obviously last week he was responsible. He had 2 fumble recoveries and an interception. So that's just an interesting fact. Did you know that?
I did actually, because he is from the Seattle area, and I live in Bellevue. Yeah.
Okay.
So him being close by, I kind of had to follow that whole storyline. It's definitely interesting, and I'm glad that Wazoo was able to get such a talented player. It's crazy he's a walk-on, and he's already one of the best players on their defense.
That's like the best walk-on you could ever ask for. And he's great. He was terrific in the Adidas All-American Bowl. I believe he had a touchdown actually on defense. So he's a great player. But this game is interesting to me. At the beginning of the year, I actually was a little more bullish than most people on Stanford, and the reason why is I think they really do have some talented offensive, has some really good offensive talent. They do have a good offensive line. guys like Dahlman and Foster Sarrell. I mean, these were really highly regarded guys coming out of high school. And I think they did some good things against Oregon. The first half last week against Colorado, Davis Mills was just so off. He looked so rusty, and it kind of was unfortunate. He couldn't play for, what was it, a week or so because of the COVID false positive. But, I love correct the name. What is the name of the wide receiver for Stanford who can absolutely fly? Is it Fico?
Simi Fehoko.
Simi Fehoko. That guy is just 4.3 dude. He's probably about 6'3", 225 pounds. That guy's a stud. Michael Wilson was one of the top returning receivers. Connor Wennington, who also was out because of the COVID protocol, is a great dual threat guy. I like a couple of the running backs. I think looked very impressive in the Oregon game, especially, and even in the second half against Colorado. I think Stanford wins this game, and I think Stanford maybe should utilize, I think, a week with Davis Mills, and I do think Davis Mills is one of the more talented quarterbacks in the Pac-12. So I think Stanford finally rights the ship. Reason why I'm a little hesitant to pick this game for Stanford is that Stanford defense is just not very good. I saw them week 1 against Oregon. They're just not very stout against the run. They have a bunch of young dudes playing back there in the secondary, and they're pretty novice, and they make, they're just new. They're young, and I don't think they're actually very talented in their front seven. So that defense, and obviously Washington State is a very good offense and a good quarterback and some good receivers. So I think they're going to score. I think it's going to be a really high scoring game. I'm talking about like 56-49 kind of game. But somehow I liked what I saw in the second half for Stanford, and I like some of those pieces they have, specifically at wide receiver and even at the running back and quarterback position. So I'm going to pick Stanford to pull that one out next week in Palo Alto. All right, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. I'll probably have you on here again. I'm always trying to get some West Coast guys to talk a little Pac-12 with me, and I'm excited to see what the season has in store. Hopefully we get – Arizona State's already canceled. Do you think Arizona State plays again this year?
Do I think they play again this year? Is that your question?
Yeah.
I think they'll definitely have a game happen. But
okay.
My worry is, like, with COVID increasing across, like, the nation and all these games getting canceled, that someone just pulls the plug on college football. That would be the biggest worry. I'm happy just going week by week and just having as many as possible. So, but it was great talking to you, and definitely down to come back on it, anytime you want. So, definitely thankful to be, here talking with you about Pac-12 football.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And go check his stuff out, West Coast CFB. I share it on my page all the time. They do great at covering analytics, grades for the week, how everything's stacking up in the Pac-12. So it's awesome having you guys on, and let's go Ducks.
All right. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
That was Clint Doepel from West Coast CFB. I am going to – we did a pretty good job covering the Pac-12. So I am now going to leak into the Big Ten. I don't have that much time left, probably about 20 minutes. But I think this week in the Big Ten, I'll quickly go through last week's games. Sorry, it's getting late. I can't even talk appropriately. To just kind of briefly go over last week's games. Indiana beat Michigan State 24-0. Another impressive win for Indiana. Defense looking very good. Offense doing enough. Nebraska gets off the Schneid. They win their first game over Penn State 30-23. Penn State, they're a team 0-4. Has anyone not lived up to expectations at the level of Penn State? This is a top 10 team. Some people thought it was a dark horse college football playoff team. Micah Parsons did opt out, but I still thought they were good. But then when Journey Brown, who obviously has had to retire due to his health problems, was not able to play this year, and then Noah Cain ended up getting hurt. That was the one I thought was the best running back field in the Big Ten, but they have not been able to run the ball well at all, and they've struggled on both sides of the ball, and it's just not a very good team. So they're 0-4. Illinois beats Rutgers. It's the first victory of the year for Illinois. That's a battle of two not very good teams. Northwestern 4-0. What an impressive turnaround for Pat Fitzgerald and his guys. I knew he'd be able to do it. I knew he's just a good coach, and he has a great program and a great culture, and he's turned them around. And this week, they play Wisconsin. Wisconsin, 49-11 over Michigan. It was at Michigan. I know there's no fans. But my goodness, is Michigan. Okay, two things. Wisconsin's pretty good. They had the COVID outbreak, missed 2 games, but through 2 games this season, I personally don't think Wisconsin's going to lose again this year. I think they're a team. I thought they had kind of an easy schedule to begin with, and I think they're undefeated going into the Ohio State game, who I think is going to be undefeated. But Michigan, 1-3. You heard Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat. I knew Michigan. I had a feeling Michigan was not going to be that good this year. They have not recruited as well. They lost a lot of guys to draft and a lot of guys to early draft entry. They had a couple of really key players opt out, Nico Collins, Ambry Jones. But I thought they would be better than this, and they beat Minnesota opening week. But I was like, Minnesota's not very good, and they are not very good. Minnesota's 1-3. Oh, I missed that game. Sorry, I missed that game on Friday night. Minnesota gets run by Iowa 35-7. So Minnesota was not very good, but Michigan's not very good. And to think that Minnesota, Michigan, and Penn State were all rated in the top 25 to start the Big Ten season, they are all a combined 2-10. And they're not good teams. They're bad on defense, bad on offense. And I do not see the light at the end of the tunnel for either of those 3 teams. Sorry. But then you have Indiana and you have Northwestern, who I think very few people, including myself. Well, actually, to pat myself slightly on the back, I thought Indiana was going to be 5-3. I thought Indiana was going to be one of the better teams in the East. I did think that they were being a little bit sold by the media. And I was right. I like some things about their defense. I like a piece like Michael Penix, who I think was a pretty good-looking young quarterback. I remember seeing him in high school. Actually, Oregon recruited him. I thought there were some good things I liked. I liked Tom Allen as a coach. I remember they had a pretty good team last year. I remember they played Tennessee in the bowl game, and I thought they were pretty impressive. Should have won that game. I liked some things about Indiana. And lo and behold, they are undefeated. And that leads us to this week, where the big game of the week, Ohio State against Indiana. It's at Ohio State. Once again, not a big difference. And when I say it's not a big difference, like literally it's not a big difference. Through 4 weeks, 24 home games, victories by the home team, 13 victories by the road team. That's less than 50% win percentage by the home team. It really, because of the lack of fans, it doesn't matter. These are neutral site games this year. And I was wondering how it was going to be, but through 4 weeks of data, I'm convinced that it's pretty much going to be a neutral site type game. So it doesn't really matter. I don't see how anyone's going to beat Ohio State. And Ohio State, whereas there has been some question, like their defense the first 3 games of the season. And remember, the 3 teams they played was Nebraska, Rutgers, and Penn State. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think that is a combined 2-8. So they've not exactly played murder's role, and they have given up some points. They gave them some yards, especially. And to Nebraska, they gave up yards and some points to Penn State, and even to Rutgers. They're number 21 defensive efficiency, and Indiana is better than those teams. And Indiana, I think, even though Indiana's offense has not always been as consistent as their defense has, I still think Indiana will be able to put up some points on Ohio State. But as no matter how good Indiana has been, I just have a hard time seeing anyone really stopping that Ohio State offense. And they would, in order to beat them, you have to be able to score. And I don't think Indiana can score at that level. And I think Ohio State's defense is good enough. The next game is Michigan State versus Maryland. Maryland's been good. Maryland's been impressive. They looked terrible week 1, but the last 2 games are against not very good teams, but 2 good victories. I think they beat Michigan State. Michigan State beat Michigan, who's really not very good. But other than that, Michigan State has not been very good. They have not good on offense, turning the ball over. Obviously lost to Rutgers. They got 49-7 to Iowa with several turnovers. Once again, 24-0. They are an offensive deficient team. And I'm going to take Maryland in that game because Maryland is not offensive deficient, and Taulia Talavea is a very impressive quarterback so far early in the season. Now, will the game happen? Maryland had the game canceled last week against Ohio State due to COVID outbreak on the team. I heard they still have some issues. That game is still a question mark. Illinois, Nebraska. Illinois got out the snide. I liked some things with Nebraska. They took out Adrian Martinez, put in Dylan McCaffrey. I thought they looked a little bit better. They jumped out to a huge lead. Then they did kind of, I guess, thought they won the game, and that game got close. Penn State actually had it in the red zone at the end of the game. They were able to get a stop. I do think getting that victory gets them over the hump. I do think Nebraska wins. I think Nebraska is better this year. They look better against Ohio State. They obviously lost their week 2 game, but Northwestern's pretty good. And that was a close game. They only lost by 7 in that game and had a chance to tie at the end. So I think Nebraska is better. I think they're more of a 500 level team in the Big Ten this year. So I pick them to beat Illinois. Iowa at Penn State. Oh my goodness, Penn State's not been good. And Iowa's looked pretty good last 2 weeks. They have a pretty good defense. They have one of the better defenses in the Big Ten. And good enough on offense. I'm going to take Iowa. It just seems like Penn State is kind of checked out. Maybe even the head coach checked out. I'm starting to hear rumblings about him going to USC. Who knows? I just think I'm going to take Iowa in that game. Next big game, Wisconsin versus Northwestern. I think the winner of this game wins the West. Now, Wisconsin, who had an outbreak and had 2 games canceled, they cannot miss another game. If they miss another game, they do not have a chance to win the West, which would be unfortunate because I think they're the best team in the West. I think they beat Northwestern. I think it's a good game, but I love what Wisconsin's doing on defense, the number 1 defense in their first 2 games as far as efficiency. Not great offenses have played, but I don't think Northwestern is a great offense either. And I think they're kind of same stylistically. I just think Wisconsin's better. I think Graham Mertz is a good quarterback. He's done some good things. I think Wisconsin's a little better on offense. And I think that that defense is so good that I think Northwestern's going to have trouble to utilize any real offense. I like the game. I think it's kind of very stylistically, like I said, the same. I'm going to take Wisconsin. I like Graham Mertz. I like that defense. I like that offensive line. Once again, one of the best offensive lines in college football. I think they win that game. Michigan versus Rutgers. I guess I take Michigan. Rutgers did win a game this year, but they still really have some talent issues. But my gosh, Michigan guys, can someone tell me what's happened to Michigan? I mean, I know they lost some pieces, but they are not good. They're not good defensively. Their secondary is terrible. Their offense is not good. They can't run the ball. They've had trouble passing for several years, and they continue to. Milton, people are like, man, he's looking good in camp. He's not looked good this year. I remember even the first game, Minnesota was like, man, Milton, did you see him week 1? I'm like, what did he do? They ran on a terrible Minnesota team who's turned out to be really bad. And actually, I missed the Friday night game. Keep on doing this. Purdue versus Minnesota. This is back-to-back Friday night games. I'm going to take Purdue. I think Purdue's pretty good. I mean, not bad. I don't think they're amazing, but I think they're a decent team. I just don't think Minnesota's really good. So it's going to be interesting to see this home stretch in the Big Ten. I really do think it's Ohio State and Wisconsin. I think Ohio State is an elite team, and I think Wisconsin is a team that if all things fall well in place, they missed 2 games, so they're going to only be playing 7 games, so 6 plus the 1. Knock on wood, they have no more COVID outbreaks, or that they have the unfortunate happening of like that's the thing that's out of their control. Like they maybe are going to play Iowa, and Iowa has a COVID outbreak, so then they have to cancel the game, and then they cannot miss one more game in order to be eligible for the Big Ten West title. Because I think Wisconsin is the only team that I still think athletically they're not up to the par of Ohio State, but it's a good culture. That's a well-coached team. If Graham Mertz can continue to play at this level that he was regarded as a recruit, a top 100 player, who knows? Like I said, Ohio State defensively, there has been some weaknesses. So if they're able to go out there, if they're able to make some plays with Graham Mertz making some plays, and that defense, which is the best defense as far as efficiency, they're able to maybe cause Justin Fields to make a couple turnovers, force a couple turnovers. They are the one team in the Big Ten that could upset Ohio State. I don't see anyone else doing it. I don't think anyone's even close to the same level. But if one team could, and then Wisconsin, if they're undefeated, then they make the college football playoff. Even if they only play 7 games, they win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State. I think that's enough to win the Big Ten. So I'm curious to see the home stretch. We already talked the Pac-12, obviously, with Ken Doepel, and I covered both. I am curious just to see the home stretch for both these conferences. The big thing with both these conferences is they got started late. Can they finish it off this year, or are they going to be able to finish all their games? You're seeing 3 cancellations, I believe, in the Big Ten, about the same in the Pac-12. It's obviously been a tough time of year. The SEC has been just ravaged with cancellations and postponements. I think there's some movement in the ACC. They had to postpone some games. Big 12, I think, is doing not too bad. But it's tough. And obviously, when you start late, remember those other conferences, ACC was starting the beginning of September. I think it was the beginning of September for the Big 12. SEC was the end of September, but then you have the end of October and the beginning of November for the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. So they're just like giving themselves very limited leeway. They cannot miss really very many games to consider themselves really a threat. I mean, the Pac-12, I think, really only has one team that possibly could go undefeated and threaten for the playoffs, and that's Oregon. No one else. Not USC. They're not going to look good enough, and I think they're going to lose a game. And the Big Ten, I really did get Ohio State, but Wisconsin, even despite losing 2 games, they're the one team that could possibly pull off the upset, finish 7-0, and I think that would be enough to get them into the college football playoff. Anyhow, folks, check us out once again on iTunes, Sportscast. Give us a like, subscribe, leave us a review. Check us out on Twitter. Do the same thing. Comment on my show. Tell me how much you like it, and we will talk Pac-12, Big Ten. Big week in the Big Ten. Couple good games in the Pac-12. Kid Doepel from West Coast College Football. He was on here tonight, and that was terrific to have him on here. Anyways, guys, have a good night, and talk to you next week.